Hey folks, Real Honesty with John Ritlin. I'm John Ritlin, and this is a 15-year reflection on Triple H's reign of terror in late 2002 to like the fall of 2003. Now I'm recording this on the 15-year anniversary of the Scott Steiner Triple H match that they had at Royal Rumble 03. So I'm recording this on the 19th. So on the off chance that this doesn't go up for a day or two, that is why. Maybe you wonder why I'm talking about this now. I was going to talk about this more towards WrestleMania, but you know what? I feel that this was kind of the starting point. The whole thing with Scott Steiner. And I've been wanting and itching to talk about the feud that he had with Booker T for a while. So yeah, this is going to be a bit of an angry rant. The whole thing with Scott Steiner, he showed up at Survivor Series 2002. He had a legit foot injury, apparently. Couldn't really do much of anything. The matches were bad. They had pose downs and arm wrestling stuff, and of course Triple H is acting all scared of Scott Steiner, despite the fact Scott Steiner can't even fucking do anything. And it's not knocking Scott Steiner. When you're injured, there's only so much stuff you can do, but it was really, really bad stuff. I mean, this was spectacularly bad stuff. If you watch their match at the 2003 Royal Rumble, and even at No Way Out 2003, the No Way Out 2003 match wasn't much better. Scott Steiner, I think even at one point, did a chop and, tried to kick Triple H's feet out from under him and fell down. Because, now, again, injury, whatever, maybe training regimen, who knows. But their 2003, Royal Rumble match is more, I fondly remembered, but maybe not for the best reasons. Triple H is trying to help Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner can't really lift off with his feet, so Triple H is having to scoot off of his shoulder and then have, lead Steiner into a whole bunch of these, moves like a double underhook, suplex, which didn't work at all. Steiner's having to hold the ropes every time he chops Triple H. I'm not saying that, Scott Steiner, even healthy, should have beaten Triple H, but the way they booked it, you would have thought that's where they were going to go. The whole thing is about the Triple H reign of terror. It was just a way for Triple H to stroke his own ego. Now, feuding with certain guys, like he feuded with former WCW stars. He feuded with, obviously to begin with, he didn't feud with a former WCW star. He feuded with Shawn Michaels for a little bit, and then dropped the title to him at Elimination Chamber. Thankfully, did not suffer long-term, effects from the trachea injury he got. Because RVD did the frog splash and mistimed it, and thank God Triple H is okay. Just saying. I may not care for the guy as a wrestler necessarily, but thank God he's okay. And then, of course, he won the title back from Shawn at Armageddon 2002. And then we go to the Scott Steiner feud that I'm talking about. And it was just a way, you had Scott Steiner, you had Booker T, Kevin Nash, and then Goldberg. And just looking at the Triple H, reign of terror, and that's really what it is. It made Raw TV unwatchable at times, and that's the main event scene. Not the undercard scene. The tag matches were okay. Too good. The mid-card, was pretty good. Lower card, it was what it was. Raw had, components where it was still pretty good, but the main event was pretty shit. The whole thing with Scott Steiner feud was just laughable. Crowd was already starting to turn on Scott Steiner right within the first few minutes. Because, he's doing the push-ups and that kind of stuff and looking dominant. But when he's having to go longer than a few minutes, and according to, I remember talking to friends of mine at the time. There wasn't as much internet. But I talked to friends of mine back east. Okay, I had friends back east, like high school friends that had moved out there. And they said they had gone to some of the house shows, Triple H and Scott Steiner, and they said it was ridiculous. Steiner was blown up after 3-4 minutes. He just couldn't do anything. And then you just look at how they had to do the whole sloppy DQ. It looked like Scott Steiner had the win, and then he didn't. And then they did a sloppy DQ. And then he sort of hit Flair. And it's just Scott Steiner was clearly blown up. And he's doing the Steiner recliner on Triple H, trying to get, trying to prove a point even after the DQ was called. And it's like, what was it? Triple H is trying to get the referee to disqualify it. People say, oh, it's because he was scared of Scott Steiner. No, I think even Triple H realized, no, this isn't working. Let's fucking DQ this. I don't know if the plan was to ever have Scott Steiner win the title, but if the plan was, it's a good thing they actually did abort those plans, because Steiner wasn't going to be able to be champion. Not in the condition he was in. And just the Royal Rumble match, it was way too long. I'm not saying it should have been 10 minutes, but I think if I remember right, it was close to 20. It was close to 20 minutes. It was not nearly the classic, not even close, that Shawn Michaels and Triple H had just a year later at the 2004 Rumble. But that's another story for another day. It was abysmal. The Scott Steiner Triple H feud was abysmal. The Royal Rumble match was abysmal. The No Way Out match was even more abysmal. And now I'm going to get into the meat potatoes of this whole rant. It's the Triple H Booker T feud. I'm going to say right at the outset, Booker T should have fucking won this feud. The fact that Booker T didn't win this feud is fucking ridiculous. And the reason it's ridiculous is because it was a goddamn race feud. And that's what fucking annoys me more than anything. I wouldn't have had a problem with Triple H and Booker T feuding and it being a straight up feud, babyface and heel, and then Triple H winning, but the fact that they made a race feud. Like, Triple H and Flair at one point, at points are talking to Booker T, and I don't remember which one said it. I don't remember if it was Triple H, I don't remember if it was Ric Flair, but saying, to Booker T, you're just a born thug and someone like you will never be champion. Now, I'm all for jokes, I'm all for ethnic comedy, all for, offensive comedy. That wasn't comedic. That wasn't comedic. It was designed. It could have been, it's designed to, knock down Booker T so he can eventually win. Booker T should have fucking won, and he was going to win the feud, and then Triple H said, apparently, I guess, reports years later, if you believe him, that he said that Booker wasn't ready, that Booker wouldn't have been ready. Bull fucking shit. Booker should have at least been champion for 6 weeks out of that. Sure, it wouldn't have been much of a payoff, but Triple H didn't need a 9-month run as champion. But just dissecting more and more of the Booker feud, he's throwing money at Booker, telling him to fetch him a towel. They're beating up Booker, and I think Booker even pinned Triple H in a tag match at one point. But just week after week, they're doing this stuff like, the racism, talking about Booker. The announcers and everything are talking about Booker. He grew up he grew up tough. I would check out the Legends with JBL, Booker T interview segments, interview pieces to really get an idea of what Booker went through. He had a really tough life growing up. And looking at where he was to where he got into wrestling, him and Stevie Ray, and becoming one of the greatest tag teams of all time, Harlem Heat, yes, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. Fight me on that if you want. I'm not saying that they're the greatest ever. They're one of the greatest ever. They're so underrated for how good they were. But then Booker T, single star, and then he's into, WWE and not being used all that great. The previous WrestleMania 2002, him and Edge were fighting over a fake Japanese shampoo commercial. They had Booker look like a complete joke at that point. Looked like a complete joke in the NWO thing, which the WWE version of the NWO by that point was ridiculous. And his teaming with Goldust was tremendous, actually. I enjoyed that. But you're seeing that Booker has what it takes. He has what it takes to become champion. He was champion in WCW 5 times in the span of, 8 months. 8 months. He won at Bash at the Beach 2000, and then his last one was the last Nitro in March of 2001. 8 times. I love Booker, but he shouldn't have been a 5-time champion that few times. He should have actually been champion in 99, as far as I'm concerned. But that's another story for another day. You're looking at the Booker Triple H feud and just how much it wasn't about WCW guys. It's like, I don't fucking care what Triple H says. Oh, it's about guys who were in WCW. Bull fucking shit. I'm not saying Triple H is a racist. I'm not saying Flair's a racist. I'm not saying that. But whoever wrote that, and it's likely Michael Hayes or, I don't know, Kevin Dunn. I can't imagine why Kevin Dunn would be racist. He probably is. He's probably racist against humans because the guy's 95% beaver, the Bucky Beavertooth motherfucker that hopefully is not around in this company very, very soon. The day he's released, I hope he cries his eyes out knowing that no one else will hire him because he's ugly, hideous, a monster. No one likes him. And he's bad at his job, and has been bad at his job, and the only reason that he still is employed is because Vince McMahon, for some reason, and I'm guessing it maybe has to do with Kevin Dunn's dad, rescuing, all those tapes from a burning car. Oh, Kevin's got a job for life. Vince, you shouldn't have had to have done that. I mean, if those reports are true, okay, I don't care. Kevin doesn't deserve a job for life. He's bad at his job. Moving on from that, I don't know who exactly booked this whole thing to be so racially motivated. And yeah, I'm fired up about this shit because it bothered me. It bothered the fuck out of me. Because there's all this building. WrestleMania 19 is one of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. In fact, it's in my top 3. And no, it was in Seattle. I was not able to go. I had suffered a car accident where I had suffered a severe concussion. What I remember, because I saw the wreckage days later, and I went to get some stuff out of it because I didn't remember, I looked at this giant dent, and I only remember seeing the dent. I don't remember it happening, but I saw this giant dent inside the door, and it made sense why this side of my head hurt so much, because my head whipped into the door because it was about 75 miles an hour when somebody bumped me, and I hit the back end of a semi because I spun out. Yeah, that was fun. Anyway, so I wasn't able to afford WrestleMania tickets, unfortunately. I would have liked to have been able to go, but live and let live. Moving on, though. WrestleMania 19, this whole build, the way they've been dealing with Booker, and the way they've been making him look like a joke pretty much since about 2002. I mean, pretty much since about the beginning of 2002. After that whole thing, the invasion angle and everything got dropped, and Booker had cost Steve Austin the title at Vengeance, and the whole grocery store incident, which was great. The whole grocery store thing with Austin and Booker is fantastic. It's like one of my favorite things. And of course, one of the ending lines, price check on a jackass, was great stuff. But after that, and after making him comedic, and I'm not even saying necessarily good comedy. Stuff with Goldust was good. But the Japanese shampoo stuff, and the feud with the NWO where it's trying to make him a babyface, trying to turn him from heel to babyface, but was doing it really stupidly because nobody believed in the WWE version of the NWO. All this stuff, and then all the racially motivated stuff. Fetch me a towel. Someone like you will never be champion. Talking about Booker being, coming from a tough upbringing and everything. And then you get to the actual match. Now, Triple H and Ric Flair's at ringside, okay. You're thinking Booker T is going to somehow overcome this. He even pulled out the Houston Hangover, which before called the Harlem Hangover. And you're just thinking about all this build and everything. Okay, all this crap. Booker's finally going to end it. I mean, Triple H had only had the championship for at that point, because I think that WrestleMania was the 30th of March 2003. So Triple H had the championship for, at that point, he'd had it for about 3 months. But it felt like forever. And that feud with Scott Steiner did nobody any favors. Nobody. It didn't do the ratings any favors. It didn't do anybody any favors. Booker T should have won this goddamn feud. And likely would have. But like I said, Triple H had to, pull political power and everything. Reportedly. But then you get to what Lawler said. Now, JR is trying to call the match straight up and everything. And being the guy who's cheering the baby faces and slandering the heels when Ric Flair interferes or Triple H is doing something dastardly, because that's how good JR is at his job. He's amazingly good at his job. It is unfortunate that JR was not able to get a little bit of solace in the whole thing that happened with his wife Jan. That the young man didn't even face any jail time, apparently. The young man that caused the accident that took JR's wife Jan is very unfortunate, and hopefully somehow, some way, maybe that case can be revisited and that young man can go away for a long time, because that's what should happen when you take someone's life like that. But JR's being the classic, a great wrestling announcer he is, and Lawler at this point is being a heel. Now, I loved heel Lawler and face JR. And I want to say that much. And I like Lawler's humor during his earlier times, like his feud with Bret Hart and stuff like that, and his other, a lot of his other humor. And I'm not blaming Lawler for this. He could have been overproduced. He could have been told to say this stuff by Vince and by other people. But the whole thing of people like Booker T can't be champion JRs, what does that mean? People like Booker T, and talking about he can't help it if his family portrait is a courtroom sketch, and a bunch of other, I don't remember all the lines, but at first you're like, okay, it's offensive comedy and this kind of stuff. And after about the third or fourth line, you just want Lawler to shut up. Because he's not even being funny at that point. To me, it's being racist. I'm not saying Lawler's racist. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying Triple H and Ric Flair are racist. But the storyline was. And this is what was ridiculous about it. The whole thing, Lawler, going overboard with the racial insensitivity and this kind of stuff. And, Booker had been open about a lot of the stuff he went through at that point and even later on. But leading up to this feud, you're thinking, okay, Booker's getting beat down by the man. He's going to get the title. And they did this whole thing where the way they booked it, like I said, he broke out the Houston Hangover. That should have been the end of the match. 1, 2, 3. And no, Ric Flair's interfering, and, they're doing the fluky finish, and the fans can see it coming, and it's not even like they were going to revisit this, because they never revisited this. They had, Shawn, Nash, and Booker versus Triple H, Jericho, and... I don't remember who. Triple H, Jericho, and somebody. Was it Christian? I don't remember. All I know is that it was heels versus these babyfaces. And that was the last time Booker really got a crack at Triple H for a number of years. And I think it was like SummerSlam 2007 when they revisited that feud. No, Triple H beat him, but at that point the feud didn't matter. But here, you had Booker. He should have fucking won this. And I know I've repeated that, but it's just freaking nauseating how they did this whole racially motivated and basically racist storyline against Booker. Oh, Triple H is white, Booker's black, Booker's inferior. That's basically what they were telling the viewers. And fans, vast majority of fans were like, bullshit. Booker is just as damn good. I'm not seeing color here on this, but if you're going to make it about color, then you have Booker T win. And the fans were fucking livid. And then Triple H hits the pedigree and takes about 5,000 years to cover him. And you're thinking Booker's going to kick out. 1, 2, 3, and Triple H wins. And that's it. That was the blow off to the feud. I mean, like I said, Booker got a little crack at him in that 6-man tag match. Which, again, I'm sorry, I don't remember who Triple H and Jericho teamed with. I really feel bad for forgetting that. Because I'm sure that it was somebody important, and it wasn't Scott Steiner, wasn't Test, I don't know. It could have been Christian. I don't remember if it might have been Christian. But it was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous looking back on that bullshit, looking back on the fact that Triple H should have lost that match. And just didn't. And it's like, what the fuck? That you did all this build, Booker got beat down. Yeah, he maybe beat him in a tag match, but you made him seem like because he was black, he was lower than a white man. And then you did this. It's like, even if it had been babyface versus heel, and they had not done any of this race stuff. Okay, Triple H being Booker T, okay, ridiculous, but whatever. The added caveat of racism meant that Booker should have won. That it should have been, he can win this here, and he can beat him, and this kind of stuff, and it was just bad. It was just really, really fucking bad. It was a black eye, and that's not me mixing words. It was a black eye on WWE Creative. That is one of the things that still pisses me off to this day. It's one of the top things that still pisses me off to this day. And in fact, at some point, I might talk about something, towards Mania. 10 things that, wrestling has done that still pisses me off to this day. 10 wrestling angles or matches. And 10 things in wrestling that still piss me off to this day. Or 15. I might be able to find 15. But that whole thing was just, it made Booker look like a fool. And Booker wasn't able to sniff the main event scene again until 2006? When he became King Booker? I mean, he didn't get another world title. He didn't get much of a world title shot even after that. Even when he moved to SmackDown, he didn't really get much of a world title shot. I mean, he was U.S. champion a couple times, and that was fine. That was certainly fine. But he deserved to be world champion way before he was in WWE. And it's just ridiculous they did it like that. So, and then quickly, of course, you had Triple H do that stuff, and he, beat Nash in two very, very, well, I mean, it was like the Judgment Day finish was a fluky finish, where Nash threw him through the announcer's table, but it didn't quite work, and then the Hell in a Cell match, one of the worst Hell in a Cell matches ever, had it not been for Bossman versus Undertaker. That was a Bad Blood 2003. And then you had the feud with Goldberg, where that's another thing. In fact, actually, I'm just going to talk about that right now. Because, you know what, I still got a little time left on this video, and angry rants are fun. The whole thing with Goldberg is, look, I've never been the biggest fan of Bill Goldberg. Now, I admit in his WCW time, sure, okay, guy was impactful, and I was a fan at the time, but he was very, very one note. But they still had a lot of momentum with him in WWE, even the mini streak, because he couldn't wrestle much because he only had a certain number of dates. They're in the Elimination Chamber. Nash is taken out really, really quickly because he had bleached blonde hair, and he needed to go be on the set of The Punisher, which was actually pretty cool. He was only there for a little bit, but that was fun. So you had, Orton, Michaels, Jericho, Nash, Orton, Michael, Jericho, Goldberg, Triple H. Okay, and Triple H was wearing bike shorts. He was noticeably smaller because he had a groin injury, I believe. And oh my God, this was so fucking ridiculous. Goldberg takes out he takes out Orton, he takes out Michaels, he takes out Jericho. I mean, and Shawn Michaels at one point had super kicked Triple H back into his pod because he was injured, so it was a way to do that. And okay, you're like, Goldberg's finally going to beat Triple H. Triple H is bloody. Goldberg kicks the pod door through. That's the same match where he speared Jericho through the pod. And the glass didn't quite give, and it looked really goofy because he kept having running through. It was just bad at that point, though, because then he goes to almost beat Triple H. Triple H is bloody. He's got everything set up. And Flair had managed, and I'm not knocking Flair, but Flair had managed to sneak the sledgehammer to him. Goldberg goes to charge, and boom, he hits him with a sledgehammer and covers him. Triple H, who could have gotten injured, who was injured there, could have dropped the title, taken some time off, and done that. No, they wanted to extend it a month. They wanted to extend the feud a month. So when they went to Unforgiven 2003, Goldberg won. The crowd popped, but they didn't pop nearly as big as they would have had it happened at SummerSlam just a month before. And that really is kind of indicative of the Triple H reign of terror. Now, he would win the title back a few months later at Armageddon 03, and then he would drop it to, Benoit at WrestleMania 20, and then he win it back from Orton at Unforgiven 2004. And I was actually at the episode of Raw right after Unforgiven 2004 where Snitsky made his debut, and we started the baby killer chant that lasted for a few weeks. That was pretty fun, because the whole Lita being kayfabe pregnant and Kane falling on her thing. But yeah, Triple H's reign of terror from late 2002 to pretty much the fall of 2003. In fact, pretty much to about the end of 2003 is one reason why 2003, Raw is kind of difficult to watch, at least for the main event scene. And that whole freaking racism, aspect, and pretty much the driving force behind the Booker Triple H feud is a big reason why I really hate on that, reign of terror by Triple H. I mean, now, look, is it all on Triple H? No, at the end of the day, it is Vince, and he has to make the decision on to keep the title on somebody. But that reign did no favors to anybody. Who came out of any of those feuds looking better? Scott Steiner didn't come out looking any better. I mean, injury aside. Booker didn't come out looking better. He came out looking like, oh, okay, well, black guy gets talked down to, and gets beaten, and gets no retribution, essentially. Whole Nash feud, I mean, Nash didn't tear a quad at least, so at least there was that. And then the Goldberg feud. They killed Goldberg's momentum, and then he won the title a month later, and no one cared. It did no favors to anybody. That's my opinion. What do you guys think of what I said here on this rant? Do you guys enjoy it? What do you think of Triple H's reign of terror? Where would you rank Triple H as far as a great champion? Do you think that he was a great WWE and world champion? Do you think he was average? Do you think he was one of the worst? I don't think he was one of the worst, but this reign of terror certainly was one of the worst ever. Anyway, like, share, comment, subscribe. Twitter links are in the description. Well, it's my Twitter link, unless the Derb wants to add his own. But anyway, yeah, follow the Derbinator at _the Derbinator. Anyway, it's been Real Honesty with Jarmithlin. I'm Jarmithlin, and I will see you soon.